What up, ladies and germs? Thanks for tuning into the newest episode of the Hustle Podcast. Your boy Cliff Fretwell here. On this episode, we're chopping it up with a Filipino wrecking machine, Mark Munoz, talking about everything from coaching his kid, wrestling at Oklahoma State, fighting in the UFC, and even automatic rice dispensers. Apparently, that's a thing in the Filipino community. Hope you enjoy it. Appreciate you coming back. Lego. Yeah, so I don't know what happened, but Jason Bryant, who helped me kind of set everything up, because like he's been doing this for a minute and I'm just a total rookie at it. Like he's over in China at the Asian Games or somewhere, and I just texted him on the whim that he was awake. I was like, "Hey, I got a catastrophe," and he gave me a little workaround for it. So we're good, man. So
that's awesome.
So
hey, man, when you face adversity, man, you got to rise.
Right. So mostly my fault, right? You got a kind of a crazy schedule, and it's West Coast, East Coast, but it's mainly been my fault. So I've been trying to get, man, I can't even, I was trying to remember like when I first met you, obviously I've known about you. Man, it was just, and I know you probably hear this a lot, but like just, I think it was the combine that we did out at Jake's place. It was like the first time I was like in the room with you and, around Trey, and like you just got this great vibe about you and how you go about working with Trey and stuff. And actually it wasn't at the combine. It was at where was it at? McCune's camp.
Dan McCune's camp.
Yeah, that was McCune. Cause I was
Yep. The second time, it was the second time when you did the combine.
Yeah.
That was a year later, man, I think.
It might have been even 2 years. Cause like McCune reached out to me and I was like, sure, I'll come in. And then I like get the camp going, and then I like look over and I'm like, oh my God, like I don't usually get nervous when I do camps, but like when there's people like that around in the room that's been in the rooms with the best, I was just like, holy smokes. But and that was one of the things, like I think it was me, Joey LaValle, and a couple other guys were doing camps and or doing sessions. And I noticed you were working Trey out during the breaks, and I was just kind of sitting back and observing, obviously, because your journey through wrestling, and just kind of sit back and watching and observing, because that's such a delicate thing. And that's the two main things that I want to talk to you about is your relationship coaching with Trey, because from the outside looking in, it looks like you've done an amazing job, and I know it hadn't always been sunshines and lollipops, father, son, and coach athlete. But I also want to, after that, I really want to talk about your experience at Oklahoma State and the perspective you gained from coming through that program, and what it's kind of made you today from your wrestling through your fighting. So, for all the dads out there that are coaching their kids, I don't want this to be a self-help book, but man, talk about that journey with you and Trey, and when you saw jumps, when you knew you needed to back off, when you knew you needed to push. Because as a dad, sometimes we feel like we need to push, and then it's like that wasn't the right time. So, talk about that. Talk about that span in his career.
Yeah, it just to preface this whole this rant I'm about to be on. It took a village to raise a child, and obviously, I was a big part of it, but also his mom and his club coaches played a big part in it as well. So we kind of gathered together as a team to actually help. Same time, I was mainly the one doing technique with him and just suggesting for him to drill and recommending that he should wrestle with different people. And so that's the journey. It definitely was a journey, because here's how it happened. He was playing soccer and baseball, and I introduced wrestling to him when he was 10, and he liked it. I mean, he was good at it. He was a very athletic kid, and he started doing it, and was only coming to practice probably like to 2 days, probably 3 days a month, and so he would play soccer, pretty much every practice wouldn't miss. He'd play baseball every practice he didn't miss. And by the time he was in 8th grade, he made this national baseball team that went to Cooperstown every year, and believe they made the semifinals. And then his soccer team made the national cup, and I think they took 4th place there. And he just was a great athlete. And we go to the freak show, and he was planning on doing big things there. And then he went 0-2. I don't think he scored a single point, and
wow.
he was mad at me, and I
Mad
didn't
at
understand.
you?
And he went 0-2, and I told him, I said, listen, bud, these kids are training 4 or 5 days a week, and you're training 1 to 2 days a month. Like, think about it. You're not putting in the time. About 2 weeks later, he comes up to me and says, this is in 8th grade. He says, Dad, I want to quit soccer and baseball, and I want to wrestle. And I said, what? I said, man, I'll, don't get me wrong. I was happy.
Right.
I was elated inside, but I wanted to know why, and so I said, man, you're so good at soccer and baseball, and you went 0-2 at the freak show. Why do you want to wrestle? And he goes, Dad, I love wrestling.
And it's probably way easier to get a scholarship than the other two route, going sports route wise.
That's true. And I don't think he was thinking about that,
sure.
But I think he was really thinking about just enjoying and doing what he loved to do. I think that's what it was. And so we had this discussion, and it went on for about a week, and even his mom was like, wait, you want to wrestle? Yeah, like wrestling is hard. You got to make weight, and you gotta get beat up sometimes. And he's like, yep, I want to do it. And then my wife was like, no, you don't want to do it. And I'm like, hey, stop that.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, let him do it.
So how involved were you before that? So he's operating at an elite level as an athlete, but it's not your comfort zone as a sport. Were you just clapping in the stands, hey, good job bringing snacks on snack day? Or were you kind of on that second layer of, just accountability and normal things? Or how were you coaching the team? Like, how involved were you with that?
So I had my club, and that's what he was wrestling for, was my club. And that was around the time that I had my gym as well, my MMA gym called Rain Training Center. So I was operating that gym. I was fighting in the UFC and trying to coach these kids all at the same time and have a wife and 4 kids. So there was a lot on my plate. And so he had told me, Trey goes, Dad, I want to quit soccer and baseball, and I want to wrestle. And I go, why do you want to wrestle? He goes, because I love it. And then he goes, I go, there's 72 schools that offer scholarships, but there's a very small percentage of those that give full ride scholarship. What makes you think out of the tens of thousands of kids that you are going to get a full ride scholarship? Because he had told me, he said, I want to get a full ride scholarship
right.
at Division I university. He had told me that. And I go, there's a very small percentage of those that do that. So what makes you think you'll be able to do that? And without batting an eye, looks me dead in the face. He goes, well, I got you, Dad. And that's when I started, I was like, oh, is it dusty in here or something, man? I started welling up in tears. I'm like, oh my gosh, that got me. And so that's when I announced my retirement, and 6 weeks later I fought and I retired. I laid down my gloves inside the octagon. I said, it's time for my family. It's time to focus on my family. And then that's when I did that. And so when he got into it, I said, okay, bud, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to call the best kids and around our area. I'm going to have them come in. I'm going to have them wrestle you, because, it's in those times where we're going to learn the most.
Right.
And so that's what we did. And obviously I didn't do it every day because I didn't want him to get his butt kicked every day. I wanted him to, you actually as a coach you got to manufacture success. So
sure.
Challenge him. You gotta know when to challenge him and know when to pull back.
Well, let me ask you this. So when he makes the decision to wrestle, so he had been operating at a high level in baseball and soccer. So he already had been exposed to, I think one of the biggest, I don't want to say issues, but one of the biggest challenges is in coaching in any sport is nurturing that inner competitor, right? And then you jump from soccer and baseball, which aren't, I don't want to say aren't competitive sports because they are, but it's a completely different world when it's just you and wrestling, and it's the toughest sport on the planet. What traits did he had when he crossed over to that you kind of knew on the inside? Hey, I know what I'm doing from a training aspect, but there's some intangibles that if he don't have, it's going to be tough to get him to the level that he wants to be, because we see it all the time, right? We see kids that have all the skill and aren't good competitors. We see guys that are vice versa. They're crazy competitors, but they just have a lack in the athletic ability or mindset. Like what made you at ease, or kind of like putting your fingers together like the mastermind, like sitting there thinking like, all right, I got some clay to mold, but it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, on the soccer field, man, he would mow people down and take the ball.
Right.
So guys try to like be physical with him, and oh man, they would be on the ground rolling around.
Right.
So that was one. And he was just gritty on the soccer field. He did all the dirty work, and he was the one that gave the most assists. And he just outworked everybody. So that's one. And then baseball, he was the dirtiest kid on the field.
as in physically dirty, not like bad attitude dirty, right?
Yeah, physically dirty. He would die for every ball. And he just had a real good hand-eye coordination. I mean, super fast, super quick, and he played third base, and so he had to be really, really quick and fast there, because that's the hot corner, So
sure,
the ball is flying out, and so he had that, and so I knew he'd be a really good athlete. I just told him a really good wrestler. I just told him he had to spend time. He wasn't spending time doing it. And so I told him, I said, listen, I got all the answers to the exam, and you just got to study with me.
Love it.
I said, that's it. And so, because he's a real smart kid, and I told him, I said, wouldn't you want to study with a person that is really smart and gets straight A's in that particular subject? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, then you're looking at the person that has all the answers to wrestling right in front of you, and so I'm asking you, do you want to study with me? And so he's like, yes, I do. And so that's when I started pushing him, and I noticed all his skills, and I knew that I had a good clay to mold, like you said, because he was already gritty, already just all about working hard. So all you need to do is just guide him in that direction, and just give him some technique.
What was the tipping point? A lot of times in business, guys talk about the tipping point, or where you kind of realize you're going one direction or the other in an extreme, whether it's like significant digression, or what was there a talk? Was there a usually it's a talk or a practice or a competition, whether it's a win or a loss. So there's a situation as a coach when you've been the places you've been around the coaches and the high level athletes that you've been, and you just kind of you reflect back on it and you're like, you know what, that was the day when he figured it out. That was the day when everything started to make sense. Was there a time with you and Trey, or was it one big moment, or was it small moments along the way that kind of culminated into the elite athlete that he was this year?
Yeah. So, I prefaced our conversation before, it was a journey, and there was a lot of little moments along the way, but then there was several big moments as well. When he first decided, that was huge, because when he first decided wrestling and just focus on wrestling, that was huge. And then the times that he lost were, when he lost against, some really good wrestlers, he's like, Dad, can you show me what I need to work on so that I don't lose again? I said, okay. I said, from this point on, I'm going to film every match. I'm going to film it on my phone.
And you do. I watch you. I watch you in the corner.
Yep.
You do.
Yeah. Yes. And that happened from the 8th grade year. And I told him, I said, I'm going to film every match on my phone. And when you're ready, let's break down the film, and let's make our weaknesses our strength and work on them. And so, to take all the emotions aside, because I can get emotional when he loses, and he can get emotional. I said, okay,
100%.
Let's get down to the bare basics and just talk about technique, And so that's why I made it a habit to film every match. And I said, when you're ready, come up to me and we'll break down your film, And that's what happened throughout his whole career. And then he made huge jumps. In the 8th grade, he went 0-2. I told you we wrestled some of the top guys in the area at his age group, even a little bit older than him. He went back to the freak show his 9th grade year and won it. And then his sophomore year, went high school elite, lost to Josh Kim, who got a full ride scholarship to Harvard.
Yeah.
One of those.
Harvard.
Two.
Yeah, I think it was Harvard. I think it is Harvard. Yeah.
Yeah. Harvard. And lost to Josh Kim, and he ended up taking 3rd, and then he won in his junior year. And so he was just taking huge leaps, and then his sophomore year, he went to Masters and lost in the Masters tournament. That's before he makes it to state, right? Because he had braces and didn't have his mouthpiece in, and he lost by a point, which caused him not to go to state his sophomore year.
Because they hit him with unsportsmanlike for not having a mouthpiece, huh?
Exactly. And that's what caused him not to state, right? And then his junior year made a huge leap, and didn't even make it to state the year before, and then the year after he takes 2nd in the state.
So up to that point, from a training, sitting down talking 101, like everything, like percentage of a given day, coach athlete versus father son. Because I made all the wrong decisions with my oldest son. My oldest son, like, it was one of those things, is like there weren't any expectations because he wasn't good. And then as I saw him getting better, and mind you, like his high school coach is probably one of the more successful coaches to ever come out of Georgia, Marty Hutzel. And I owe a lot to that guy learning how to coach, but I didn't know how to coach my kid. And now obviously it was my oldest one. So it was my first one. And I made a ton of mistakes. And one of the rules later on that I got to way too late in his career was kind of like you guys, I'm not going to come and talk to you about wrestling. Like the rule that I tried to enforce in the house that I broke all the time was, we don't talk about wrestling at home unless you bring it up, which he knew that was kind of his safe haven. So he hardly ever brought it up, which I broke the rule a bunch. But the beauty of that is early on is my wife wasn't a big wrestler. It's like she didn't grow up around wrestlers. She didn't know anything about wrestling, but she is a fiery competitor. So once that spark of Anthony getting better at wrestling, you know, she jumped
Yep.
on board with me, and it was almost like his safe haven of being able to go from dad to mom when dad's being crazy dad coach. Like mom was almost the other way around. Like when I realized that it hit later in his career when I needed to back off, like mom was like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh man, I created a monster here. But like, how much, I guess my question is, how much balance did you have? Like, cause it obviously worked, but I mean, like I said, we don't know the behind the scenes, but it seems like you guys have a great relationship.
Oh yeah, we have a great relationship, and you know, we wrestle all the time in the house. and mom, Christy's like, stop wrestling in the house, because he loves it so much, man. And we grab each other's wrists, and then we start hand fighting inside the living room, inside the kitchen, inside all around the dining table. I mean, we'll be sitting down at dinner, and he grabs my wrist. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, and so. But there's a huge balance, and the thing is, like you said, with like just like you and Steph, Christy, she was an amazing athlete. She understands it takes work to be great at something, and especially in athletics. And she's a competitor in her own right. She got drafted second round to do professional softball, and she decided she didn't want to do it because she wanted to raise a family with me. So I was the lucky one there. But so she's a very, very huge competitor. And if you ask Trey, you know, what would happen if you didn't make weight for a competition? What would happen between your parents? And he would say, well, my dad would, you know, say, hey, you know, you just got to make weight next time. But my mom would shun me.
Really?
Yeah, she would shun me. So mom, she gets on him and make sure he's doing the right thing, make sure he's eating right, make sure he's, make sure he's doing everything else outside of the wrestling room that he should be doing. You know,
what was one of his biggest challenges to date? Like challenges that, I mean, whether it was diet, nutrition, you know, obviously he put in the time. I mean, what if you had to pick one, like from a coaching perspective, like what was one of his biggest challenges, and even from a parent perspective?
Yeah, so his sophomore year, even, you know, his sophomore year, he was cutting about 10 to 15 pounds a week, you know, still growing. He was cutting down to, 120, 126s.
Right.
His sophomore year. And, we really had to buckle down with nutrition and his intermittent fasting, his, fasted cardio, his doing everything right. And Christy was on him. So that was a big challenge. And then he even said, Dad, you ever feel like quitting the sport because you cut too much weight? Oh, I was like, yes, but I've been there before. So,
you of all people, right?
not there before. And so I said, okay, well, next year, let's not cut weight. Let's just, wherever we land, we gotta, wherever we land, that's where we'll wrestle. But you have to make the commitment to lift and do everything right as far as nutrition and as far as strength conditioning. So that's when we went to the training lab and got hired, and not hired, but he went and started training with Coach Calavita over at the training lab. And
which at the time, like what was that? 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah, that was about 3 years ago almost.
And at the time, that guy wasn't as huge as he is now. Like, and for you guys listening that don't really know who Mark's talking about, this is a guy who literally has one of the best strength training programs for wrestlers and MMA athletes right now. And I know he does a lot of other ones, but it's like Dillashaw, Pico, like this guy and David Taylor now, like this guy is the God, I wouldn't even know what to put him in, but like this dude is the like the pinnacle of like, you want to be on that high level of strength training. He's the guy. it made a huge difference. But I got to ask a question, man. Like, so I Googled it. Average size of a Filipino man is 5 feet 4 inches. You are an absolute monster, and Trey is on pace to dwarf you. You're 6 foot, 250 plus. Like, what happened there?
I don't know, man. I have no idea. I think I'm just a mutant because my sister's actually big for being a Filipino girl too, and we're just a big family,
Right.
I don't know. I think it was the hormones in the meat. I don't know, man. I have no idea.
You eat a lot of Chick-fil-A growing up and got those free steroids or something, man. That's crazy. That was what I was thinking about. I was like, Filipino wrecking machine, like that on paper doesn't really sound like a very intimidating thing. And then you see you walking down the hallway and you're like, holy smokes, this is not the average Filipino. And the funny thing is when I'm looking at Trey and I'm looking at you at that first camp, and then I see him a year later and he's not much bigger at the combine, or 2 years later, and I'm like, dude, what is when is this kid gonna be as big as you? And then like, I saw him this year at Doc B, and I'm like, oh man, like he's about a year away from just whooping you to death after he gets in that college room. So
I know.
It's just crazy what a focus in an area of your life can make a huge change in just a short amount of time, with you guys deciding not to cut weight. And man, let that be a testament out there to everybody. It's a nature of our game, whether it's MMA fighting or whether it's wrestling, but the nature of our game for so long has been be the biggest at a weight. And that trend is changing, thank God. And it's actually changing, I think, sport-wide in wrestling, and it's also changing in MMA as well, whether it's a safety thing or whether people say it or not. And I actually saw a tweet from James Green this morning talking about the day weigh-in and wishing they would weigh in the night before. And I think they're starting to get it right, man. And look at Trey, and the results don't lie, right? Like you look at some of these guys that go up, and I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges in your MMA career, and you can speak to this, but on the outside looking in, like the minute your training camp is about making weight, your training camp's kind of shot, right? Because like you can't focus on getting better, but you're kind of trapped. It's like, I got this contract, this is my job, this is what I have to do. And like, I just feel like, I think it might have been Chris Perry that told me that. We were talking about, I think it was talking about DC like 4 or 5 years ago, or no, it was Johnny Hendricks when he started missing weight. And he was like, man, once your training camp starts to be about making weight, man, it's a wrap, but talk about that. And, that you were kind of, that was the thing that was, I would assume, an issue for you in your MMA career. And then you go the other route with Trey, and it ended up being like a completely different experience. I mean, would you go back and change what you did and go kind of the Cormier route? It was like, look, I'm not going to kill myself to make weight. I'm going to focus on getting better.
Yeah, man, for sure. And so that's a large part of the reason why we went up, is because, I have wisdom there. And so I'm not going to do the wrong thing twice, especially with my son.
Amen.
And so, and I had a contract to fight at 185, and, in hindsight, 2020, I could have just told them, hey, I want to go up. If I would have went up, it would have been it would have been so much better for me. But my whole camp, pretty much my whole UFC career was based upon making weight. And I can tell you some horror stories of me making weight and passing out and, waking up and having to like go to the weigh-ins, like just depleted and having to put a smile on my face, making it look like I'm good to go, but I was just weak inside. So, man, from putting on Abilene to being in a bath that's like singeing my skin, and I'm just trying
Epsom salts, iodine baths or whatever. I mean, that was Dos Anjos went through the same thing, and there's there was some wicked rumors flying around about him like almost dying, and then Cyborg, and I'm sure like me not being as connected as you are, that whole scene, like I'm sure there was way worse stories than that. But like you see these guys killing themselves to make a paycheck, and I get it, but like, you go back and evaluate a lot of that as an athlete and see the guys that were shoulder to shoulder with you too. It's like, damn, I wish I could go back and kind of fix that. But like you said, you took a different route with your son, and a lot of times that happens on a wrestling team. Like you got to go somewhere to be in the lineup. I mean, and I'll get
that's true.
Yeah, and I'll get to Oklahoma State in a minute, which coincidentally enough, they had a weird shakeup this year with weight, and it didn't seem to pan out for them, shifting guys around. But I mean, what? So Trey signs with Oklahoma State, or not Oklahoma State, with Arizona State, and
he was about to sign with Oklahoma State, though.
Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna bring that up. If you want to talk about it, I'd love to talk about it. But I mean, obviously,
he was about to sign. He was gonna sign on the dotted line. He had his NOI ready to go, man, I he just didn't have a good he didn't have a good feeling at his official visit, but I'm telling you, he loved all the guys on the team, everyone that, and the kicker was like, even though he loved everybody on the team and he can get along, he still came back home, was like, I think Oklahoma State is the school. But then he said, Coach Smith gave everybody their offer, but didn't give me my offer, and then he goes, I tried creating conversation with him, and I got, one word answers and stuff like that. And so I was like, man, really? He goes, yeah. I said, but Trey, they're giving you a great offer. They're giving them, 95%, and they don't give that to anybody.
Right.
I mean, they don't just give that to anybody. I said, and he said, well, I don't think they really want me, Dad. I said, buddy, listen, they want you, and so he was still on the fence, but then, he went to Arizona State, and, Zeke Jones was just giving him, all the time that he needed, and then, Chris Pendleton, Jim McCulley were there, where they were both in the delivery room when he was born, and they both babysat him. So that kind of played into the equation as well.
I don't know if I'd let Jamil babysit my child. Maybe Pendleton, but.
That's funny.
Well, yeah, you talk about that fraternity though. Like, I mean, there's certain schools that, I mean, Oklahoma State, Iowa, they have the tradition, right? And Penn State's kind of trying to claw their way into the scene. And even though it's like ridiculous the amount of titles they're winning now, they still don't hold a candle to what Oklahoma State and Iowa's done. And if you're not like a wrestling historian, you think Penn State is everything right now, and they're doing everything nobody else has done. And then you go back and look at the history books and look at Oklahoma State and that tradition. It's like, holy smokes, like Penn State needs 50 more years to catch up. But talk about the fraternity, because I follow wrestling. I'm a wrestling fanatic. You'd have to be living under a rock to not know that. But the minute I got introduced to Chris Perry and me and him started becoming friends over the last 5-6 years, like I've become like a big time Oklahoma State fan. And I have a real good friend of mine, Josh Steven, been an Oklahoma State fan his whole life, goes out to Oklahoma State for the coaches clinic every year, like just been diehard my whole life. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. They finish third every year. Like, no, they're not the best. So like, and it's been like a running joke, but like the more I've gotten to know, Perry and Pendleton and you and Jamil and, all these other guys that have come through that program, like I respect what Kale does, and I respect what Gable did and this, that, and the other, but there has never been even like a Kevin Ward type guy who was not a rock star on the Oklahoma State team. And this is what I want to get into with you, because I've gotten good stories from Perry and Pendleton over the years, but I want to get some really good perspective. Is like, I've never been around an Oklahoma State wrestler, whether they were really good or average, and they didn't
Yep.
know wrestling. Like they didn't know, they like every
Oh.
Oklahoma State guy, they know wrestling, they know coaching, they know technique, they know that like they know everything. What is so special about John Smith and Espo
Yeah.
and those guys that have been part of that program that produces guys like that?
Yeah, and it's something special. It really is. And when I went to Oklahoma State, I didn't, I went there on my recruiting visit, and I was just like, oh man, this is crazy. It's all about wrestling. It's nuts. I've never been a part of that. And then when I met John, and then Mark Perry was actually my coach. And when you say Chris Perry, man, Chris Perry was knee high to a grasshopper when I was there.
Right.
There's actually a picture of us, of me, Hardell Moore, and this kind of Jimmy Arias, and then there's Mark Perry and Chris Perry, and his sister Hannah, and they were just babies. I mean, literally like toddlers.
Right.
When I was there. So that's crazy. But okay, so enough with that tangent. I'm just gonna go on here. But when I went to Oklahoma State, I noticed right away the first day of practice that Coach John desired perfection. If you didn't hit a technique to his liking, he would make you do it over and over and over again until you got it in the realm of it working in a match.
Right.
So I thought I was doing it right, but then a lot of times he was like, nope, you need to put your head here, you need to do it again. And I go, I could have swore I put my head down on a high crotch, and he goes, nope, well, you need to drive up first before you change off. You can't just change off first. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I thought I did that. But he's just pointing out all these little things, and he makes you do it over and over and over again. And they say repetition is the mother of learning. And, he was the one that actually really, really taught me that, because I thought I was doing, I was the number one recruit in the nation, getting recruited by all the schools. And, I decided to go to Oklahoma State, and I feel like I don't know a single thing, because I'm doing technique with Coach John, and he's telling me all the things I'm doing wrong. Granted, they're all the little things that make a huge difference. But still, I just like, man, I suck.
What
and
did that demoralize you, or did that motivate you, or you kind of sitting there like a confused puppy, like, man, I came in here and I really feel like you want me on the team. You feel like I'm good.
Yeah.
And for the people, and it's not like I've been around Coach Smith in a lot of social settings a bunch, but the times I've been around him, I've been terrified, because there's just, I have the unbelievably blessed life of being friends and being acquaintances with a lot of really high level people in wrestling. And I don't know how that happened, but and so like, I consider a lot of high level guys my friends, and I don't get awestruck over too many of them. But Coach Smith, like every year I see him at the scuffle, and I go up and shake his hand and chit chat with him a little bit, and he's just got that gaze in his eye, and I just feel like he's just sitting there going, I wish this guy would walk away from me and leave me alone, even though he, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause I'm kind of like panic and get scared. I'm like, I'm going to say something stupid, but like, it's that persona about him that like, he's no bullshit. He like, if there was one way to describe Coach Smith, and you have to use the cuss word, it's no bullshit. It's not no BS. Like Coach Smith is that guy. And how his aura, his demeanor, everything about him, like, was there ever a time where like you knew he cared about you, but it was tough love, or was it always just like, you did it out of fear? Or like, what was the relationship like from like year 1 to year 2, then you All-American 2001, did the relationship change? Was he just the same dude from day one?
All right. So I'm going to tell you this story. You're going to crack up.
Yes. I love it. I'm hoping for these. Yes.
So I come in, my first year, and I'm struggling in the room. Like I'm this 189 pounder coming in, number one recruit in the nation, and I'm here wrestling with like Hardell Moore, who's a 58 pounder, and I'm wrestling Jimmy Arias, he's a 50 pounder, and I'm a 189 pounder. I'm wrestling these guys, and I'm like, dang, I'm getting whooped on. I'm wrestling Mark Branch, who's like 6'4", 167 pounds, and I'm getting whooped on by him. And I'm going around the room, and what Coach Smith does, he brings in all the freshmen about an hour before so that we can learn the Cowboy way, right? And so we're learning all this technique and all these little things that make a huge difference. But I can't hold a candle to these guys in the room,
Right.
And I'm like, oh God, it sucked, right? And so Coach looks at me, he goes, you need to go 167 pounds. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, really? And so this was the time where it was day before weigh-in, right? And then, I'm kind of experiencing the culture there. And, Hardell, after he gets done wrestling, he puts on his plastics, he goes straight to the bike and goes 5 on, 5 off, 5 on, 5 off, and he's just
the bike or the
Airdyne? The bike.
Okay.
The bike. Just the easy, just the bike, like a road bike thing,
I was trying to give Hardell some props, but we all know he's weak. Go ahead. I love Hardell. He's a mess, dude.
So he goes there, and I see Jimmy go there, and I see because they partner up, and I see Mark Branch do it too, and they're all doing it. And I'm like, man, so okay, all right. So I'm trying to get it, and I'm dying here, and I'm like, because I lose a lot of weight, and I think I lost about 8 pounds that wrestling practice, and then they put on their plastics, and then they start biking, right? And so I'm biking, and I'm just like, I'm dying here. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna pass out. And then Jimmy goes, hey, Munoz, all you gotta do is look up in the air, look up the ceiling, and it'll make you feel better. And I'm trying to look up. It's not making me feel better. they're just laughing at me because I'm dying here, and they're just cruising along, right? And I'm getting off the bike, and they're like, Munoz, it's your turn, because 5 minutes without. I'm like, I'm just going to sit here for a second, guys. And so they're cracking up at me, right? And so I'm doing all I can to make weight. I make weight because I go from.
Oh, so you went down. You went down.
I went down to 167 my freshman year, my true freshman year.
So that was a 25 pound plus cut?
Yeah. I went down. And then and then my redshirt freshman year, I ended up going a weight class up, 177. But that's still I'm still like, in that summer I was about 215. I'm still cutting a lot of weight. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm still cutting a lot of weight, right? So I'm getting down to 177. I make the lineup, right? I make the lineup at 177, right? And so, I'm wrestling, and I'm ranked. I end up getting ranked in the nation. I end up being in the top 10 in the nation.
Scale of 1 to 10, how great? Scale of 1 to 10, how great did you feel cutting down to 167, 168?
Oh, dude, I felt terrible. And if it was a tournament, I was great. But if it was a dual meet, oh man, it was hard, really, really hard. And I wasn't wrestling at all at what I was able to do. So my freshman year I wrestled 177, and then that year they end up changing the weight classes because of the 3 Michigan wrestlers that passed away from cutting weight.
Right.
That's when they kind of bumped up the weight classes. I think about 7 or 8 pounds, and then they said you couldn't use plastics and stuff like that because of what happened to those wrestlers, right? And so it went up to 184, and I was still, I mean, this is where I'm getting bigger, and I was still cutting so much weight to make 184, and this is my sophomore year, right? And so I was actually ranked in the nation, ranked top like 8 in the nation, and I make the second day, and then after the first day, I was 11 pounds over to make 184. Yeah. So then I made weight, and then I wrestled, and then ended up getting to the blood rounds, right? And then there I wrestled Andy Rovat, and ended up losing to him 98, and it was a huge controversial match. He ends up placing 4th that year, or 5th, or something like that. And I'm just like, man, this is stupid, right? I'm like, I can't do this anymore, right? And so I kind of just went off, and Jamil, Reggie, Wright, and I, we didn't do as well as we'd like to at the tournament. So we were kind of off, and kind of just wandered off and was doing our own thing, because we, misery loves company, right? And so was
Lewis on the team at that time, or was he after y'all?
Tyrone was, he was, when I was a senior, he was a freshman.
Oh, wow. You're old, man.
I am old. I'm old, man. I'm a dinosaur.
You ain't that old, man. You're younger than me, dude. I mean, I'm better looking, but it's all good. So anyways,
man, Filipinos have good skin, man.
Yeah, you're right.
About that.
Yeah, I do not have any pigment in my skin whatsoever. And me retiring to California is going to be a struggle for my skin, but we're going to make it happen. So all of y'all are just sitting around having a pity party after coming up short. Yep. And I'm guessing Coach Smith at no point tried to console you guys or make y'all feel good about yourselves.
No, not at all. Right. And so we go home, right, and he calls me into the office. And this is my sophomore year after nationals. And he calls me and he goes, Munoz, what'd you think about the tournament? I said, Coach, I crapped the bed. I didn't do well, and I had 11 pounds to cut, that first day, and it was just the snowball effect. Like I think I need to go 197 pounds, Coach. And he goes, no, I think you need to go down to 174. I'm like, what? I said, Coach, I just told you I had 11 pounds to lose that first day, and I felt like, I beat all these guys that are on the podium. Like I could do really well at 197. It's just because I just can't wrestle, right, Coach? And he goes, no, you're just doing it wrong. I think we got to get you on with a nutritionist and everything. I go, I don't know about that, Coach. And this was the time where I was cooking for myself, right? And he would come to my house, and Filipinos, they're known to have rice with every meal, right?
Which is not great for cutting weight.
Right. And so he came to my house, and I had this rice dispenser that's about maybe like 3 feet tall, and I just put rice in it, right? And he saw it there, and it's you have 1 cup, you have 3 cups, and you have 4.5 cups to dispense. You just push down the levers, and those amounts come out if you push down that amount, right? And he's like, what the hell is this?
So you have a rice dispenser in your house?
You got a rice dispenser in your house? He goes, Munoz, this is right. This is why you're not making weight, right? And so I was like, I'm like, shoot, Coach, I'm not eating a whole pot of rice every time. He goes, well, why do you need this thing? So he's just, talking to me about that. And then he comes in and he calls me in again. He goes, all right, so we're going to get you a nutritionist and we're going to do this. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I just need to get bigger. And he goes, no, we're going to do that for you. Right. He goes, I know you're going to go home for a little while and, come back. And then be ready to go. All right. So make sure you're about, 190, 195 pounds coming in. I said, okay, whatever. And so we talked for about, probably about an hour in his office. And then, I end up, I end up, leaving his office, and then I end up lifting weights, and I end up getting pretty big, and me lifting at that time, and I'm still growing, and I was a late bloomer, I guess, but Coach Perry ends up helping me lift, and I lift with him every morning, and I end up going home and still staying on the same schedule, and then coming back and wrestling with J.J. McGrew, who's trying to make the Olympic team in 2000. He had to wrestle Joel Sherrod in the World Team Trials to make, the Olympic trials to make the Olympic team, right? And so I come back and I'm wrestling, and I lifted throughout the whole time I was home, and I'm wrestling with JJ, and I'm doing pretty well with JJ. And Coach Smith comes in the room, and he looks at us wrestling and pauses in confusion, has a confused look on his face, and he looks at me. He goes, Munoz, is that you? He didn't recognize me.
Is that you?
So
yes, Coach. This is the guy
so
you recruited that's on your team.
Yeah, he goes, Munoz, is that you? He goes, get on the scale. I get on the scale.
How nervous were you? How nervous were you walking over to that scale?
Oh, I was so nervous, man. I was like, shoot, he's gonna kill me. He might cut me from the team, right? But I'm doing really good against JJ. I'm doing really good.
He probably didn't even care. No. He probably did not care.
Yeah. No, he didn't care. So he goes, what are you doing? You want steroids, son? I go, no, Coach, I swear I'm not. I'm not, Coach.
It's the rice dispenser, Coach.
Yeah. And he goes, you need to be down to 220 pounds a week, 215 pounds in 2 weeks. You need to get down. And I go, I don't know about that, Coach. So I come back in, and I'm 237, again the week later, and he's just mad because he's getting Cormier. Cormier's coming in, and he's a 2-time judo national champion coming in, and he wrestled 197 pounds. And so, he was just, when Cormier came in, it was just like, he didn't understand the cowboy way. And so, I just, I ended up beating him, and he ended up going on 184, and I ended up being ranked number 1 my junior year, and got upset in the semis. Oh man, that still hurts me. But the guy I beat 4 times that year ends up being a national champion, Brad Baring. And then I ended up taking 3rd that year, and then I won in my senior year. But
both those years were at 197, though, right?
Yeah.
You looking through the crystal ball for Coach Smith? Hey, Coach, I'm big. I need to be big and wrestle big. Yeah. But I mean, so at that point when he throws you on the scale, I think a lot of people don't realize too, like, so you placed a couple times at Junior World Championships, right? Back when it was FILA, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I ended up taking 2nd in the Worlds my junior year, and ended up losing to this Russian named Sahid Sajidov, who beat Gil Sanderson at the Worlds, in the Worlds, and I believe in 2005 or 7,
right,
or 6, one of those. I ended up losing in 5-4. I was beating him. Here's an interesting thing. At the Junior World Championships, I go in and I'm running around because I got to cut a little weight, and there was a couple guys in there, and I was running, and then I wanted to roll around. I was bear crawling, crab walking, all that stuff, and then there was a Russian in there that was doing the same thing. He goes, hey, his translator came by. He goes, you want to drill, right? And so I was like, oh yeah, we can drill. And so we're drilling. And we end up having a great drilling session. And then all of a sudden, I see the guy that I'm supposed to wrestle in the finals of the Junior Worlds, and it was the guy that I drilled with before. It was Saeed Sajidov. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So, but yeah, it was, I ended up doing pretty well. I mean, my sophomore year in cadets, I ended up making a world team in Greco. I ended up, I was top 10 in Greco. And then I ended up taking 5th my junior year. My junior year at the Junior Worlds.
Yeah, because I was 96 because that was my senior year in high school, and the only way you could keep up with wrestling was a USA Wrestling like magazine that I don't even know if they put out anymore. So like now I get all these magazines from like Win Magazine and all that stuff, and I put them out at the gym, and like nobody looks at them. But like literally, like back in the day, that was your only connection to wrestling, you know. And it was cool to see. You had that 1-2 pager in the middle that old school guys will remember, and it was like the up and coming like prep kids, and it was like always guys like you and Scott Schatzman and Teague Moore and all these other guys that.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and like Schatzman was always at my weight every year at Fargo and stuff like that, and I think Cody Sanderson too. So like it was always like, but that was your only connection to wrestling. You know, and if you didn't get that magazine, like you had no clue what's going on. Like, and we've come so far. I mean, the experience with Coach Smith, like, and you talk about he demands perfection. It's a tough love thing. I think over time you build that trust level with him. Even though there's guys that have done it, right, that doesn't mean they can coach other human beings the same way they did. And a lot of guys, I think they take what was successful for them and try to make it the same thing that's going to make everybody else successful. And I'm not saying Coach Smith does that, because he's got different types of guys, whether it's a Roger Chandler versus somebody else who's got a more like Dean Heil versus a Jordan Oliver, and all those guys have had success. Like, you know, what is it about Coach Smith other than the perfection and the technical side of it that he gets those guys to develop? He gets because I mean, you can recruit the best guys in the country, you know, but to me, you really want to see if a guy's a high level coach. Take a kid like Trey Munoz, and over 4 years develop him into a guy that jumps 3 or 4 levels over the course of 4 or 5 years. And that's just not grinding in the wrestling room, right? And just doing stuff over and over. That's spending time with that athlete, gaining trust in that athlete, being there when they got their worst days, when they got their best days. Like what about Coach Smith? And like I said, man, from a technical aspect, I've never been around an Oklahoma State wrestler that wasn't high level, but the total package, like what makes him so special from a coaching aspect?
This is based upon my own experience with him. Like after I spent a lot of time in his office, and I had some struggle in college. I struggled a lot as far as like being away from home and it not being the same like it was at home, because I went from a huge diverse city in Vallejo, California, where it's in the San Francisco Bay Area, where there was a lot of different races of people there, and different. I mean, it's just it's different, to Stillwater, Oklahoma. It was a culture shock, to say the least, right? And so John, actually, Coach John, he there were times where he would bring me out to his house and we'd play pool, and there was times where he would have these outings, and we'd have like some pig roasts and all that stuff. So outside the wrestling room, he was although it was team functions, he was, for me, he would bring me in the office and really talk to me, but it took about a year for me to finally realize that that's what he was doing. Right. So, he really took me under his wing. He really did. He cared for me. He took me in and would sit and talk to me about some of the things I had going on in my life, and really helping me maneuver and go through those situations. I ended up getting married when I was a senior in college, and so ended up having a family. So that was a challenge in itself. And then just being homesick and away from home, that was a challenge from itself as well. And he helped me a lot. He helped me so much in those things I was going through. So him not only being a perfectionist, being an amazing wrestler, but and technician, he on the other side really helped me out emotionally, and was there to help me and kind of be a father figure as well. So and I thank him for that, and he knows I love and appreciate him for that. I'm eternally grateful for him to be able to do that for me. I thank him all the time every time I see him. And he does clinics for me, and I try paying him. He doesn't want to accept payment for me. It's just
right.
My coach, just cash this check, please, and he never does. So
at least tear it up and tell me, don't screw up my bank account. I mean, it just seems like you just look at his career on paper, and it's just amazing. And then you look at the amount of time he's been coaching, and then that's impressive. And then you hear a story like what you just said, when it's hundreds and hundreds of hours over the course of 4 or 5 years with one individual, knowing there's 30 plus other guys on the team, and he's maybe not spending that much time with everybody, but that just goes to show the amount of time and effort it takes to develop just one athlete, and taking a step back and looking at, obviously you were around that program and you follow it and what Coach Smith has done with JoJo. What's kind of your take? I mean, obviously this year the weight thing was kind of a head scratcher for everybody. But just overall, like I know Chris Perry has been a huge, like, I don't want to say buffer, but he's kind of been the guy that's kind of worked with JoJo through high school and stuff like that. And I mean, even with the monster career you had as an athlete and as a fighter and stuff like that, and the pressure Trey felt, whether he wanted it or not, or whether you wanted him to or not, they're going to feel it, right? Because of who Dad is. Like, other than Jordan Beacon Burroughs coming up and wrestling, like, I don't know anybody else can feel that much pressure. Like, what's your take on how that's played out, or do you even have a take on it?
Yeah, I do, and I was always told Trey, I said, Trey, listen, like, this is your career, and I'm here to help you, and aside from all the pressure that you feel, and we've had some talks about it. I said, because he sees it, everywhere I go in the sport of wrestling, people are like, coming up to me and shaking my hand and give me bro hugs and all that stuff. It's like, he sees it, and, he understands, but at the same time, we always have, like, we over communicate, and I always tell him, I said, buddy, this is all about you. This is not about me. And so I'm going to tell you everything that you need to do as far as, like, training and wrestling, but this is wrestling. I'm going to be your dad first, so when we're home, we're not going to talk about wrestling. Even though I want to, we're not. If you want to come up to me and ask me questions, then we will. And so there were times where I used to catch him inside the garage, because we had mats in our garage. There's times, and I can show you I can send you a video of him doing stance in motion. He set the clock for 5 minutes, and I already saw that the clock went 5 rounds for 5 minutes, and he's doing stance and motion for 25 minutes already, and he keeps going. And I'm like, man, this is nuts, That was his 8th grade year, going into 9th grade. So, and then from there, it's just like, I told him, I don't want to be a dad or a coach that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on you, because you're going to have pressure on yourself already, because it's, wrestling is totally different than a team sport, because it's just you, it's mano a mano, man, and it's just you and the other guy, and if you lose, it's on you, and so there's a lot of pressure on people, and I didn't want to put undue pressure on my own son, and so, I told him, I said, it's about improvement. It's not about perfection. It's about improving every single time you're on the mat, and that's how it's been, for 4 years. And he's adopted that. And, I'm proud to say that he probably does feel the pressure. I don't know, you might have to ask him, but there's no pressure from me at all. But he goes out there and calm. I mean, when he wrestled the NHSCAs and was wrestling against Edmund Ruth and wrestling against this guy named Mason, I forgot his last name, but he was ranked number 1 in the weight class. Dang it, I'm drawing a blank here. That's what you get when you get hit in the head for a living.
Yeah.
You forget names. But anyways, he was wrestling the number 1 seed, and he went out just calm as can be, and he had like 3 bad calls against them, and he was just calm, and I was on the side freaking out and telling the referee, giving him the wrath, the Munoz wrath, and
it's Mason Renich, the Baylor kid.
Yeah,
Mason Renich. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that because you were pretty fired up. I think Singleton had just gotten done, and I was hanging around watching Trey, and you were a little fired up more than normal.
Oh man, dude, they're trying to screw him, man.
Right.
In that match, he ended up. I don't know. There was a scramble situation where he got an Iranian, right, and he ends up, putting the guy on his butt. Ends up getting the Turk and was working out of the Turk, was improving position. And he wasn't in the Turk for more than probably maybe a second and a half. And then he's improving position, and the guy calls stalemate. And I'm like, what are you calling stalemate for? Right? This is still 0-0. And then there was another situation where he was on the side of the mat and had both legs, and he didn't call 2. I'm like, that's 2. That is 2, right? And he didn't call 2, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, man. And I go over and I said, can you get confirmation from the guy, from the other ref, please? And he goes, nope. He agrees with me. It's not 2. I said, you got to get confirmation, and he didn't. And I'm just like, you trying to screw my kid? And then Trey just kept wrestling, man, just cool as can be. Just kept wrestling, kept being offensive, and ends up winning the match. Right, the guy rode him out just wonderfully, and man, I had to apologize to him after the match. I said, sorry, but I kind of got upset. He goes, no, it's okay, Dan. I know you were trying to fight for me for my call. And I go, all right, but don't get that emotional. I'm like, do as I say, don't do as I do. But he did well, man.
So I've kind of observed from afar for a little bit, and then I've observed kind of up close as I've got to know you. And you're one of those guys, man, like once you kind of get to know you, it's like you've been friends with you your whole life. You're just that type of down to earth guy, the amazing growth that you've talked about Trey's had. And, that's the thing is like, we're just talking about Trey cause it's a wrestling thing, but you got 3 other kids too. And I know the type of person you are and the type of person your wife is. And like Trey's you don't put all your time into Trey and the other three aren't. You're putting that same amount of effort and energy and time and passion and love into those other three as well, which is, man, I've had two boys. I've had two boys and they were 10 years apart. And if they would have been 3 or 4 doing 2 other sports at a high level, man, it would have been hard for me to balance, you know? And I think that's just, it might feel like it's just a wrestling thing, but I feel like with wrestling, man, you're once you're all in, like it's tough, but man, how have you grown as a parent and as a coach going through this with Trey? You know, because like I feel like I had amazing growth going through it with Anthony as a coach and a parent, learning what to do and what not to do. And then the things I changed with Cameron, and Cameron didn't even start wrestling until really his freshman year in high school. And my deal was him. He didn't want to wrestle. He didn't have any interest in it. Anthony was kind of, you know, Anthony was really good, you know, and he wrestled at Indiana and didn't have a great career there, injuries, this, that, and the other. But Cameron never had an interest. And I'm biting my tongue in half, just hoping one day he wrestles, just so I could have that experience with him, you know. And then he starts wrestling in high school. He places 3 times in high school, and he was never a super stud, but he got to the point where he was good enough to where, like, it's good to walk into a gym and you're one of the better kids in the gym. And that's kind of the only, you know, like if that was the pinnacle for him, that's great, because that's a validation of work you're putting in towards something. You know, is just knowing that other people recognize that you've made growth. But as a coach and as a parent, nobody throws you a parade or rolls out the red carpet when your athlete is successful, or, hey, you're a good parent. Congratulations. Here's a parade for you. Like, and that's a struggle, you know, because I mean, you're talking about 4 kids and a wife and a business and a career. Like, what growth did you make as a parent and a coach through that you think is going to help you long term as you take other things that you learned with Trey and you apply that with other athletes and relationships and your kids?
Yeah. You know, that's kind of a loaded question, but I'm going to try to answer it as best I can. But it all boils down to knowing your kids, right? So knowing your athlete, knowing your kids, and knowing how they tick, right? So what I'm saying is, and to kind of delve more into it, if you know your kid, right, knowing them, how they communicate, their communication style, their personality type, their learning style, you know, if you know those things, so like if they're a kinesthetic learner, if they're a visual learner, if they're auditory learner, you know, like if they're a combination of all 3, because they usually are if they're an athlete and especially a wrestler, you got to know how to coach them towards that, and also communicate to them based upon how they want to be communicated to, right? So what I mean is, you can get a rise or a motivation out of somebody if you yell at them, right? But there's some where if you yell at them, they'll tuck their tail in between the legs and walk the other direction, you know. Right. So you got to know how to communicate with your athlete, or especially your kids. And then there's that aspect of actually knowing the stuff that you actually do teach, you know. And so and that's the experience level, and how well you're a student of the sport, and how well you're being able to teach it and communicate to them how it's supposed to be done in a match or in a playing situation, right? So for me, I learned a lot, man. And I'm still learning. There's never a time where I'm not learning, but I'm always learning with my own kids. You know, we just came back from Reno and Chicago, where my daughter ends up, and she's a part of a volleyball club, and we're going to these national qualifiers so they can qualify for nationals. And we went to Reno, and, you know, I actually played a little bit of volleyball when I was growing up, and so I'm able to help her and coach her there, and she's playing on one of the best clubs here in Orange County called T Street Volleyball Club, and so I set up a volleyball net. We have a volleyball net, and I have her, do some drills, and because she wants to, and she's like, Dad, can we set up the net and play some volleyball? I'm like, yeah, sweetheart, let's do it. Obviously we got to set up the time and put it in our schedule. And Christy ends up helping me doing that, because she's the more organized person in the bunch. I'm more of the, I'm more of the take it as it comes and do it, but
if all us men would just realize that we just need to let the women handle the important stuff like early on, it would be so much easier after 20 years of marriage and probably running the clothing and the wrestling gyms with Stephanie for probably 6-7 years. Like it's abundantly clear I have no business doing anything but showing wrestling moves and drawing pictures.
Exactly. And Steph does a lot, man. She's awesome.
Oh man, I would be an absolute man. And I know I'm the face and like I get all the credit, and I know sometimes it does sting her a little bit, and I don't blame her, and I don't give her enough credit for how amazing she is, not just with our family and our home life. Cause like, I don't stress about the water bill. Like that never enters my mind if the car insurance has been paid. Like I just know Stephanie handled it, but like she's putting in 14-hour plus days like I am at the job. And when I'm at wrestling practice, she's grocery shopping or making sure Cameron isn't starting a biker gang or whatever's going on, so like and it's a great balance, but I mean, just God, how big of me and you would just be busted up old wrestling coaches sleeping in a closet at a gym if we didn't have women like guiding us to organization. But man,
trust me, I understand, man. My wife is that. She is man. She is a champ, and so you're right. So if I didn't have her in my life, I would be a disorganized guy in the lead. I mean, I don't have any words to even say, but like you said, man, I wouldn't be the man that I am today without my wife, for sure.
Yeah. Well, man, I tell you, I could sit here and talk to you all day about wrestling. You're one of the guys in a room or a gym or wherever that I always try to find and talk to. And man, I just like walking away with a little piece of wisdom, whether it's just one thing you said or a story you tell me about, or just watching you interact with Trey or your other athletes, man. And it's just, you're one of those guys I look up to, and not just in our sport, but as an individual and as a father, man. And like I said, I've been wanting to get you on this thing for a while because I knew you'd have some great stuff, and I'm glad we finally sat down to do it because I know you're a busy man. But last question: what are you gonna do with yourself next year when Trey's at Arizona State? Like you scaling back? You putting road miles in or what?
Yes, man. I'm gonna focus on myself, man. I gotta peel off some layers from my body right now, man. So I want to get back into shape, and I'm gonna set some time aside to focus on just my health and the well-being of just my physical. I want to be able to get in a half marathon. I want to do some triathlons, maybe. We'll see about that, but I want to be able to do some races with my wife and spend more time and doing that, because I've been in a wrestling room for 5 years now for 6-7 hours a day,
right.
So now it's gonna cut that in half, so now I got some time to be able to spend time with more time with my kids and more time with my wife. And there's another business I'm opening up, and I got to spend time doing that. So yeah, there's just a lot of things, and I'll be able to go on more military tours where I'll be able to teach our military men and women how to finish people with their hands and protect our country if they have to go hand-to-hand combat. So I love doing those, and I have an anti-bullying campaign where I do those, and I speak about my times of being bullied and how I rose above that. And I've been having that for over 10 years, and thank goodness, because I've been getting some positive feedback and some people saying that changed their lives because of my story, man. So I'm fortunate enough to do what I do and love what I do, and that's how I'm living my life right now, man. And it's going pretty well, man. I'm truly blessed for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time, Coach. I'm getting out to California for a couple camps, so I'm going to make sure I stop in whether I'm invited or not.
Please.
And get some time with the Munoz family. Appreciate your time, Coach. Do. I'm glad we finally got you on, and have a good day, man.
Thank you, Coach. We'll talk to you soon.
Tired of bringing in camp clinicians that give you a wide range of disjointed techniques and mixed bag of execution? Hit us up at cmpcamps.com where you can pick a specific technical system, whether it's hand fighting, scrambling, crab and legs, Granby system, anything like that, where we can focus on a specific technical system over a short amount of time in a couple days, and we'll give you the skills drills and position drills needed to continue that progression far after we're gone after camp and get you guys dangerous for the upcoming season.